The day Oscar, the best actor, officially announced my identity on Facebook. I happened to tag him on Facebook as well, but what he posted was, after 7 years of marriage, with you and him, and what I posted was, love and hate drift away with the wind. From now on we shall not meet. When he rushed home with our son and found that I had left the divorce agreement behind, the two of them started frantically searching for me. Chapter 1. While I was cooking, my husband Oscar came back with our son Alex. Alex ran into the kitchen excitedly. Mom, the three of us are going to record a TV show together. I took the stack of papers from his hand and looked at it. This is a reality show called I Want to Have a Home. It helps single fathers with children find suitable female guests to rebuild their families. I frowned in disagreement and said, our family of 3 is doing well. Why pretend to be separated to deceive the audience? Besides, husband, you are currently at the peak of your popularity and don't need to participate in any reality shows. As soon as I finished speaking, Alex cried and punched my back repeatedly, saying, Mom, you always ruin the fun. After venting, he turned and ran back to his room, slamming the door with a bang. I softened my tone and looked at Oscar. Honey, didn't we agree when we had Alex that we wouldn't let him be exposed to the entertainment industry too early? He's only 5 years old. Unexpectedly, the usually gentle Oscar said sternly, Alicia, you said yourself that you would go back to work once Alex started kindergarten. He's already 5 years old. Do you find it interesting to stay at home every day? Now that I've secured such a good job opportunity for you, you're being picky about it. I was choked by his harshness and couldn't speak for a moment. He was the one who initially said I shouldn't work and that he would support me for a lifetime. Now, he is the one who criticizes me for not being diligent. I used to be an actress, and my fame even surpassed that of Oscar. Later, we had a secret marriage, and I quickly became pregnant with Alex. Due to the instability of the pregnancy and Oscar's eagerness for the child's birth, I made the tough decision to step back from acting. During childbirth, I suffered from amniotic fluid embolism and spent 7 days in the ICU before I regained my life. I remember that when I woke up, I saw Oscar with red eyes sitting by my bedside. When he saw me wake up, he slapped himself hard a few times and said, Alicia, if I had known you would suffer so much, I would never have insisted on keeping this child. Afterward, regardless of my objections, he immediately went to get a vasectomy, just so I wouldn't have to experience the pain of childbirth again. I developed health issues, and to help me recover, he refused to let me go out to work, so I stayed at home and became a full-time housewife. But I didn't expect that as his fame grew, he would spend less and less time at home. On the day he won Best Actor for his new movie, he didn't even go home. In fact, I can feel these changes. I just choose to deceive myself. Thinking of this, I stopped arguing with him and silently turned to go into the kitchen. Alex rarely gets to spend time with Oscar, and before bed, he clings to Oscar to tell him stories. I heated 2 cups of milk and was about to take them into the room. Suddenly, I heard Alex's voice coming from behind the door. Great, as long as Mom agrees, we can record the show with MS. Fiona, Oscar said, shoo, this is our little secret. Don't let your jealous mom know. Chapter 2. Suddenly hearing that name, my hand trembled, and the milk in the tray fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Fiona is our university classmate. I have been with Oscar for a few years, and she has been pursuing Oscar for a few years. I still remember the day Oscar and I defined our relationship. We walked hand in hand at school. Fiona bluntly stopped me. Alicia, your girlfriend is just temporary. One day, I will take Oscar back. At that time, Oscar really disliked her, saying she was shameless. Clearly knowing he had a girlfriend, she still always expressed her affection for him as if no one else was around. But Fiona loves openly and doesn't care what others say at all. It wasn't until Oscar and I got our marriage certificate that she finally lost hope and went abroad. I don't know when she came back or when she got in touch with Oscar, but from the words of him and his son, I could sense a different kind of affection. Hearing a noise from outside, Oscar suddenly pushed the door open, a look of disdain flashing across his face. After being a full-time housewife for so many years, you still can't handle this little thing? He frowned and awkwardly touched his nose. I have a meeting with the director about the new film tonight, so I won't be back. After finishing his words, he stepped over the broken glass on the floor, picked up his coat, and turned to leave. He is lying. After being together for so many years, I am familiar with every little movement of his. I didn't say anything and lowered my head to pick up the shards on the ground. In a moment of distraction, I cut my hand on the glass. I frowned and called out, Alex, Mommy's hand is hurt. Can you help Mommy get a band-aid? Unexpectedly, Alex rushed over, shouting, "I don't want to, you silly mommy." And with a bang, he slammed the door shut. I sat on the ground in a daze, wondering what I had gained after all these years of giving so much. When I returned to my room, exhausted in body and mind, the divorce agreement lay lonely on the bed, and Oscar didn't even notice it. I sighed and ultimately hid it in the drawer. At that time, I naively thought that spending every day together filming a variety show could save my crumbling marriage. It wasn't until reality slapped me in the face that I realized love doesn't disappear, but it can shift. The recording time arrived quickly. In order to pretend to be single, our family of 3 did not appear at the filming location at the same time. Oscar took Alex around to chat with other guests. I have a more introverted personality and am not good at socializing. And after so many years away from the big screen, no one recognizes me. So I sat alone in the corner, silently eating the fruit platter on the table. At that moment, the director introduced the last guest to arrive, Fiona. Everyone stopped talking and turned to look at Fiona when she walked in. She has changed a lot compared to her university days. Back in university, she was thin with dark skin and looked rather plain, but now she dresses fashionably, and her tan skin paired with her tall figure makes her look healthy and vibrant. In contrast, I look at myself. Due to taking hormone medication, I have gained quite a bit of weight. Taking care of the child and doing housework every day is exhausting, and even though I dressed up with care today, I still look tired. Fiona saw me, smiled brightly at me, and then naturally sat down next to Oscar. All the actors, including Oscar, enthusiastically struck up a conversation with her. Chapter 3. From their conversation, I learned that after returning from studying abroad, she became a very famous producer in the entertainment industry. Even though Oscar deliberately avoided looking at her, I could tell from his occasional lingering gaze that he admired her. In that moment, I couldn't help but feel inferior. "Alicia, long time no see." Lost in thought, Fiona suddenly called out my name. She stood up and put her arm around my shoulder. "Let me introduce you all to my university classmate, our drama department's beauty, Alicia." Hearing that I was the beauty of the department, everyone looked at me with curiosity. Suddenly, all eyes turned towards me, and I smiled a bit awkwardly. Their gazes were filled with skepticism, which made my heart tighten. Fortunately, they quickly shifted their gaze and started chatting about other things. Today, the director's team just let us interact freely. The official games and tasks will start tomorrow, so the overall atmosphere is quite relaxed. I didn't expect that Fiona still wouldn't let me off the hook during dinner. Everyone was chatting back and forth, but Fiona suddenly burst out laughing. Under everyone's inquiry, she casually glanced at me and said, "I just suddenly thought of a funny incident from university. During the final exam for the improvisational performance in our freshman year, Alicia and I were assigned to the same group. At that time, she said her Mandarin accent was very strong, and after the performance, the teacher couldn't help but say, 'If you had just honestly played a mute, you wouldn't have wasted such a beautiful face.' After saying that, she even mimicked a part of my lines from that time for everyone. Everyone laughed in agreement, and among them, my son Alex laughed the loudest. Of course I remember this. I was born in a small mountain village in Province S. When I first entered university, I was often laughed at by my classmates because of my heavy Mandarin accent, and that final exam was the most embarrassing experience of my life. At that moment, when Fiona brought it up in public, my face instantly turned bright red. At this point, the little boy sitting next to me, who had been silently eating, suddenly said, "Ms. Fiona." Bringing up someone else's embarrassing moments as a joke for others to hear is very impolite. Fiona's intentions were suddenly exposed by a child, leaving her at a loss for words. Oscar smiled and mediated, saying, "Fiona was just joking. I don't think Ms. Law would take it to heart." He calls her Fiona, yet refers to me as Ms. Law, eager to distance himself from me while not caring about the rumors circulating. My heart feels as if it has been struck by a fist, heavy and suffocating. I didn't expect that boy to speak again. A joke is only a joke if everyone finds it funny. Otherwise, it's just making fun of someone. After saying that, he seriously asked me, "Ms. Alicia, do you find it funny?" That child defends me so much. I should stand up for myself. I nodded in agreement and said, "Not funny." The child smiled broadly and said, "Shouldn't Ms. Fiona apologize to Ms. Alicia?" Upon hearing this, Oscar couldn't sit still. He slammed his chopsticks on the table and said, "That's enough. Alicia, do you need Fiona to apologize to you?" There was a strong hint of threat in his tone. and I suddenly found it very uninteresting. So I put down my chopsticks and left the dining table. Chapter 4. In the evening, the director's team announced that there would be a session for anonymous letter writing and team formation, and after forming teams, they would complete a game task together tomorrow. Mutual selection can directly form a successful team. If not mutually selected, one will team up with those who chose themselves. Naturally, I chose Oscar and Alex, but after a while, the announcement began to broadcast that Oscar and his son, along with Fiona, had mutually selected to form a team. I self-deprecatingly curled the corner of my mouth. I originally thought I would team up with other families that were also not selected, but unexpectedly, during dinner, the boy and his father who had defended me chose to team up with me. After hearing the results announced, I took the snacks I had originally prepared for Alex from my suitcase and proactively went to express my gratitude to that father and son. Only then did I learn that the boy's name is David, and his father's name is Samuel. After receiving the snacks, David made a face at me. Don't worry, Ms. Alicia. My dad and I definitely won't hold you back tomorrow. The next morning, we gathered by the swimming pool. The director's team announced that the first game of the day would be a triathlon completed by a family of 3, testing their coordination. The first swimming competition would be completed by the female guest. Hearing this, my expression turned a bit grim. I didn't know there would be a game requiring us to get in the water, and I hadn't prepared a swimsuit. Noticing my discomfort, Fiona raised an eyebrow. It's clearly written on the electronic schedule what you need to prepare. Didn't you see it? The matter of participating in the program has always been handled by Oscar, but he has never sent me the electronic itinerary. Fiona patted my shoulder and said, I brought a new one. You can wear mine later. Her swimsuit style is bold. It's a bikini. When I came out after changing into my swimsuit, I found that Fiona and I were wearing the same style. Seeing me come out, Fiona exaggeratedly covered her mouth and said, Wow, Alicia, how did your figure become like this? Your lower abdomen is covered in stretch marks. Not far away. Oscar also frowned at me and said, If your figure isn't good, don't try to wear such revealing swimsuits like others. I, who was already lacking in confidence, began to feel completely at a loss. Suddenly, David's voice came from across the pool. Ms. Alicia, don't pay attention to what others say. You are the most beautiful. With his encouragement, I calmed down, no longer paying attention to others' opinions, just focusing on the competition at hand. Fiona suddenly leaned in and said to me, I told you, Alicia, one day I will take Oscar back. Today, I will show you who really occupies his heart. Before I could react to what she was planning, as the staff blew the whistle, I instinctively jumped into the water. As we approached the finish line, Fiona, who had been keeping pace with me, suddenly moved right next to me. My leg inevitably kicked her in the abdomen. She let out a scream and quickly started to flail in the water. I originally intended to pull her up, but I felt a cramp in my leg. Now both of us were struggling in the water. Amidst the splashing water, I saw Oscar jump in, shouting, Fiona, as he dragged her towards the shore. Chapter 5. And I, because my leg was getting more painful, involuntarily sank deeper into the water. Just when I felt like I was about to suffocate, I suddenly felt a pair of strong arms wrap around my waist, pulling me away from the depths of the water. When I reached the shore, I realized it was Samuel who had jumped into the water to save me. He seemed to understand that I had sunk because of a cramp in my leg and was helping to massage the muscles in my calf. Meanwhile, my husband Oscar was completely focused on giving Fiona CPR. When Fiona finally opened her eyes, Oscar hugged her tightly, his eyes red. You scared me to death. Fiona, I'm so glad you're okay. Fiona rested her head on his shoulder, gave me a provocative smile, and then, with red-rimmed eyes, said, Alicia, I kindly lent you my swimsuit. It's not my fault your figure doesn't suit it. Do you know how dangerous it is to trip someone in the water? After listening, Oscar walked up to me with a stern face and accused, Alicia, I didn't expect you to be such a malicious woman. I explained. I didn't. She suddenly swam over on her own. Unexpectedly, Oscar coldly laughed and said, Alicia, apologize to Fiona. Alex also rushed over and shouted, Ms. Fiona almost drowned. You bad woman. Apologize quickly. As I looked at the father and son, I suddenly felt they were so unfamiliar. Not wanting to waste any more words with them, I leaned down beside Fiona with Samuel's support and said, You won. You really didn't have to do so much. Perhaps what you wanted, I have already disregarded. Due to this incident, the Ironman triathlon was temporarily cancelled and replaced with a cooking competition. Each group had no money. The male guests took the children to the village to gather ingredients, while the female guests stayed home to cook. Just 2 hours later, Samuel and David returned. Hello, Xiao Ming. I also quickly prepared the ingredients, putting the hen on the fire to stew, and made a few home-style dishes. As I was finishing up, I saw Oscar and Alex from next door returning, covered in dirt. I don't know what happened, but they only brought back a handful of green beans and nothing else. Hearing me say that dinner was ready, Samuel and David hurried over to help me bring it to the dining table. David generously praised, "Ms. Alicia, the dishes you made are the most appetizing I've ever seen." Looking at his exaggerated expression, my previously gloomy mood suddenly brightened a bit. On the other hand, Fiona probably doesn't know how to cook. She hasn't managed to prepare a single dish all day. The three of us are getting ready to start. Alex started making a scene, pestering Oscar and saying he was hungry. Then he actually brought his bowl over to our table and arrogantly said, "I'm hungry. Give me that chicken leg." David shot him a fierce glare. "If you're hungry, go find you, Ms. Fiona." Saying this, he picked up a chicken leg and took a big bite in front of Alex, golden grease hanging at the corners of his mouth. Alex looked at me with anticipation, probably thinking that I would, as usual, be unable to bear seeing him freeze and starve for even a second and would immediately give him something to eat. However, I just used a napkin to wipe the oil off David's mouth, and then I placed another chicken leg in his bowl. "You're still growing. Eat more." David looked at me with bright eyes and gave a big hm. Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, Alex pouted and started to cry, was taken away by Oscar, who had a rather unpleasant expression. Chapter 6. After dinner, Samuel instructed, "David, you've worked hard cooking for Ms. Alicia. Go give her a shoulder massage on the sofa," while rolling up his shirt sleeves and starting to tidy the table. Taking the initiative to wash the dishes is a privilege I have never enjoyed in all the years I have been married to Oscar. In Oscar's eyes, household chores are meant to be done by women. After washing the dishes, Samuel naturally helped me put on my coat. This afternoon, we found a nice reservoir nearby. "Let's go for a walk together." I thought I had no plans for the evening, so I went out with them, sitting by the reservoir with my legs hugged, watching the moonlight spill over the water's surface, reflecting on the events of the past 2 days. I made up my mind to put divorce on the agenda once I return. I am not a stray dog that begs for attention from others. I have my own pride and persistence. Suddenly, a clear and melodious tune entered my ears. Samuel somehow found a leaf and started to blow into it. David then jumped in front of me and pulled me up from the ground. "Ms. Alicia, let's dance." I'm really good at dancing, but in fact, he was chubby, and his dance moves were not very coordinated, resembling a little bear. I couldn't help but let out a pft of laughter. Then, together with him, we danced joyfully by the reservoir. After jumping until he was drenched in sweat, Samuel also stopped. After exercising and breaking a sweat, I felt completely relaxed. Samuel quietly draped his jacket over my shoulders, and then he and I each took David by the hand as we walked towards the guest house. They escorted me to the door of the room. David tugged at my sleeve, and as I bent down to look at him, he kissed me on the cheek and said, "Good night, Ms. Alicia." I smiled and patted his head. Unexpectedly, he suddenly said, "Dad also wants to give Ms. Alicia a goodnight kiss." Samuel cleared his throat twice, a suspicious flush creeping onto his face. He looked at me with deep meaning and said, "Alicia, don't be sad over people and things that aren't worth it. After all, sometimes you have to leave the wrong ones to meet the right ones." After saying that, he dragged David away. Just as I shook my head and was about to open the door, an angry male voice rang out behind me. "Your son just suddenly got sick and called for you all night. And here you are, still in the mood to have fun with others." I turned around to see Oscar awkwardly standing behind me, his casual clothes covered in dirt and giving off a strange smell. I was so angry that I laughed. "Oscar, when you don't need me, I'm Ms. Law. When you do need me, that's when you remember I'm the child's mother. You can take care of Alex if he's sick. If you can't, you can take him to the hospital. Don't forget we're still recording the program. We should avoid any suspicion." I have always spoken to him in a gentle tone. At that moment, he was stunned by my retort, and the last bit of frustration in my heart finally dissipated. After saying that, I opened the door and went back to sleep, enjoying a good night's rest. The next morning, I heard another group of guests say that Fiona made a salad with green beans. As a result, some beans were not fully cooked and were eaten by Alex. Alex was food poisoned and was taken to the hospital by Oscar for gastric lavage. When Fiona came down, she had 2 big dark circles under her eyes. She scowled, silently poured herself a glass of water, and returned to her room. Last night, the best actor yelled at Fiona for a long time. I could hear it even while I was sleeping in my room. Another group of guests was gossiping. I curled my lips slightly and said nothing. Chapter 7. Because Oscar and Alex are still in the hospital, the program recording needs to be paused for 2 days. The content recorded a couple of days ago has also started airing on television. What shocked everyone was that as long as it was captured on camera, it was almost the original video straight out, without any editing. In an instant, both Fiona and I trended on social media. I was trending because my appearance and personality had changed so much that netizens expressed that marriage is truly a terrifying thing, hoping I could find my former self. Fiona, on the other hand, was criticized by sharp-eyed netizens for a series of outrageous actions, being dubbed Art Master, implying that she is overly delicate and pretentious. Fiona angrily went to confront the director's team, saying they shouldn't air it without editing. Unfortunately, the director's team didn't take her words to heart at all. When Oscar and Alex returned, the director's team said we could choose to continue with the original team or select new partners again. Oscar stared into my eyes. Alex and I choose to team up with Alicia. I was listening to David tell a new joke when I shook my head and said, I don't want to. I choose the original team. In the following days, Samuel and I became increasingly in sync. There were even many people online starting to ship the 3 of us. However, Oscar and Fiona, who spent every day together, had more and more conflicts, and they always avoided the camera to argue. As the program recording approached its end, the official program Weibo suddenly announced, "Thank you all for your love for the program." In fact, there is a real couple in the show. From now on, voting will begin, and viewers who answer correctly when the answer is revealed will receive a red envelope reward. Once the news was announced, it caused a huge stir, and the program's ratings reached a new high. The couple with the most votes is Oscar and Fiona, and the other couple is Samuel and me. At this moment, Oscar exploded in anger. I want to withdraw from the program recording. It was never mentioned before that there would be real couples revealed in the show. If that's the case, wouldn't the audience think I'm deceiving everyone? The director's team just sent him the contract details again, and upon seeing the exorbitant penalty for breach of contract, he fell silent. The other guests guessed from Oscar's reaction that he was actually married, and they all began to speculate about who the movie Emperor's wife was in the program. That night, Oscar found me, this damn production team. How could they scheme against me like this? If we are forced to reveal that I'm married, it would be too detrimental to my image. Alicia, I watched him, who was anxiously pulling at his hair, with great interest. Oh, what do you think we should do? Why don't we announce it ourselves first? Then you can cooperate with me to say that what Fiona and I did before was all arranged by the production team to attract attention. This way, we can turn the tables on them. Oscar was smug about his own cleverness. I nodded obediently. Of course, you are my husband, and I would never help outsiders set you up. Hearing my agreement, Oscar walked away with a beaming smile. He didn't notice the sarcastic smile at the corner of my mouth. Chapter 8. On the day the program was recorded, Oscar indeed did as he said, tagging me on Facebook, 7 years of marriage, with you and him. The accompanying picture is a photo of our family of 3. Subsequently, he posted a heartfelt essay expressing his love for me and his responsibility towards the family. He also clarified that his interactions with Fiona were all part of the show's script. I finished reading his essay on the way home and then shared his Facebook post with the comment, "Love and hate drift away, and from now on we shall not meet." I believe that his choice of me back then was sincere, but I also know that he began to regret his past choice when he met the more outstanding Fiona, and I have no intention of forgiving him. I had already hired a professional packing company a day in advance, and in just 1 hour, I completely removed all traces of myself from this home. I placed the divorce agreement on the shoe cabinet and left this place I had lived in for many years with my bag on my back. Just as I moved into the newly rented house, the doorbell suddenly rang. When I opened the door, Samuel and David stood outside in unison. "Ms. Alicia, do you need help? How did you know I was here?" I asked in confusion, although I did ask Samuel a few days ago if he knew of any reliable platforms for renting houses. I never told him where I was renting. Samuel coughed twice. "Actually, I am the landlord of this apartment." I welcomed both of them into the room, poured a glass of water for each of them, and sat down on the sofa opposite them. "Go ahead. What else are you hiding from me?" David was the first to speak. "Actually, we are not father and son. He is my uncle, and I am rented by him to appear on the program. Samuel looked at me with a flattering smile. Actually, I planned this program all by myself, and I invited each guest one by one, with the purpose of helping you see the person beside you clearly. I listened silently to their explanations. Seeing that the atmosphere was off, David smiled and said, "I'll head home first. Uncle, good luck to you." After speaking, I ran out and opened the door to the next room. It was then that I realized Samuel was not only my landlord but also my neighbor. The feeling of being deceived made me very upset, and I gritted my teeth and said, "Samuel, if you don't clarify everything today, we won't meet again." From his mouth, I finally learned the whole truth. Samuel is a junior to me. During university, we once collaborated on a play. However, at that time, I was the center of attention due to my appearance, while he was an unremarkable chubby guy who could only play minor roles. The classmates see him as honest and dull, and they all like to make him do some dirty and tiring work. Only I, not only never bullied him, but also loudly stood up for him when others made him do their bidding. After graduation, we coincidentally starred in the same movie again. It's just that I was the female lead, while he was just a little eunuch with only a few seconds of screen time, whose hand I accidentally stepped on and injured. He looked at me with bright eyes and said, "I didn't expect that before I left the crew. Senior sister, you found me with a tube of ointment," apologizing while personally helping me apply it to my swollen fingers. From that moment on, you became the goddess in my heart. Chapter 9. I still remember that chubby boy, but I just can't connect the clear and handsome young man in front of me with the memory of him. He continued, "I realized that I wasn't suited to be an actor, so I switched tracks to become a director. And unexpectedly, it really allowed me to make a name for myself. Only then did I realize that the dark horse director who has won numerous awards in recent years is actually him. It's just that he is very low-key, and whenever he appears, he always wears a mask and a baseball cap. During the recording of the program, no one recognized him. My original intention of becoming a director was to one day personally elevate you to the pedestal of fame. Yet, I never expected that you would marry and have children so early. Later, I came to terms with it, thinking that as long as you were happy, it was enough. However, I repeatedly encountered Oscar at business banquets, entangled with other women. He even openly brought along Fiona, the girl he looked down upon in college, as his date. I thought it was time for you to know everything, so I planned this program. I see now. I was quite puzzled at the time as to why the production team would invite a washed-up female star like me to participate in the recording. It turns out that even Oscar benefited from my influence. He placed a thick stack of scripts in front of me and said, "This movie is tailor-made for you. It has been sitting with me for too many years. Alicia, now that you have freed yourself from a marriage that was as burdensome as a swamp, are you willing to join me in a battle for glory?" I didn't hesitate for long before I took his outstretched hand. He smiled and said, "I'll give you a month to prepare. You'll join the crew in a month." After taking a shower and lying in bed, I finally had time to check my phone, which was overflowing with messages. The entanglement between me, Fiona, and Oscar caused Facebook to crash directly. After Oscar posted a short essay, he was directly hammered by the official program team, along with the Facebook post I made. He and Fiona were almost drowned by the spill of netizens. Some netizens dug up my early works and praised my acting skills, and I unexpectedly gained hundreds of thousands of followers. Oscar sent me a lot of messages, starting with, "You crazy woman, are you satisfied now?" In the end, he probably finally realized the divorce agreement and the already empty home, turning into, "Wife, I was wrong. Please come back home. I don't want a divorce." I replied to him, "Let me know when you decide to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau." And then I never acknowledged him again. I didn't expect that his public relations team quickly came up with a countermeasure. He lamented online, asking for my forgiveness and vowed that he would do everything possible to win me back. He even posted proof of his vasectomy from years ago for my sake, claiming that he has always loved me, and that he was just momentarily lost. I can't believe he actually gained a wave of brainless fans. A prodigal son returns. Gold is not exchanged. Unfortunately, he doesn't know that Fiona has arranged to meet me. In the cafe, Fiona placed an ultrasound report in front of me and said, "Alicia, I'm pregnant." It was then that I realized the so-called sterilization was all a lie. I took a sip of coffee to suppress the bitterness in my heart. "You're pregnant. You should go find Oscar. What do you want from me?" Unlike her previous vibrant self, she now appeared to be in a frenzied state. She looked at me with anger. "Because of your commotion, Oscar said he must break up with me. He said that once we are together, his career will be ruined, and he also said he already has a child, and that I must terminate this pregnancy, accompanied by her accusations. She actually raised the kettle of boiling water in front of her and splashed it at my face. Fortunately, I had been on guard against her since I sat down, and at that moment, I dodged her attack with a quick move. The waitress screamed and called the police. Fiona tried to run but was surrounded by other customers in the cafe. Chapter 10. We were both taken to the police station. Since I had not sustained any substantial injuries, Fiona was verbally reprimanded and then allowed to leave. As we finished giving our statements and walked out of the police station, Oscar was surprisingly waiting outside. It turned out that someone recognized us and posted a video online of everything that happened in the cafe, including us being taken to the police station. As soon as Oscar saw me, he rushed over and hugged me tightly. I'm sorry, Alicia. I was blinded before. Please give me another chance. Oscar didn't know where I had moved, and now that he had finally found me, he naturally wasn't going to miss this opportunity. He took a diamond ring out of his pocket, held my hand, knelt on one knee, and said, Alicia, you have been with me from the time I had nothing until now. You will always be the person I love the most. I know I was wrong. Can we give each other a chance? Fiona, who had been left out, completely broke down when she saw him take out the diamond ring, crying out. She questioned him, Oscar, do you still have a heart? I am already carrying your child. You must take responsibility for me. Unexpectedly, Oscar retorted, I have been sterilized for so many years. It is impossible for me to have children. What proof do you have that this child is mine? Fiona did not expect Oscar to be so shameless. After a bitter laugh, she unexpectedly turned and rushed into the endless flow of traffic. Fiona saved her life, but her reproductive system was removed, and she would never have the possibility of bearing children again. She hated Oscar to the core and submitted all the evidence of Oscar's involvement in illegal activities to the relevant authorities. Oscar quickly went from being an acclaimed actor to a prisoner. I successfully obtained the divorce certificate. Oscar's assets were frozen, and the house was auctioned off. I am Alex's only remaining guardian, and he has been sent to me. The child I have spoiled is now looking disheveled, and he cautiously looks at me. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't understand before. I nodded, knowing you were wrong is of no use if it's just words. I will be very busy with work in the future, and you are not allowed to slack off on what you need to learn and do. After observing for a while, he has indeed become much more sensible than before. I paid to hire a nanny to take care of his daily needs, and then I set off to join the film crew. Having gone through this marriage, I will never lose myself for anyone again, not even if he is my child. After all, in this world, the only one who won't betray me is myself. This movie is about survival in desperate situations. I spent an entire year in the dense forest, tortured to the point of losing 20 kilograms. At first, the other actors in the crew thought I was the lead actress who got the role through connections, and they were somewhat resistant to me, often trying to sabotage me. But I don't use any doubles, nor do I use dubbing. I insist on using my original voice, no matter how tired I am, no matter what time it is. As long as the director asks for another take, I will never have any objections. With the completion of the film, the rest of the crew started calling me Sister Ollie instead of Alicia. They even gave me the nickname Workaholic. The day I hold the Best Actress trophy in my hands and give a speech on the shining stage, I revealed a heartfelt smile. Thank you for the past. After all, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Of course. I also want to thank our director Samuel. Thank you for pulling me out of the abyss. Samuel, who also won Best Director, looked at me from afar and raised the trophy in his hand. Netizens edited our photos together, captioning it, "Meeting at the Peak." It's no secret that Samuel has pursued me for many years in the industry, but I am just not ready to start another relationship yet. As for what happens in the future, who knows? Perhaps one day, I will agree to Samuel, but I will not give up my career again. Since I tasted the feeling of standing at the peak, I found that rather than being a climbing vine, I hope that Samuel and I can be like two oak trees leaning on each other. You have your copper branches and iron trunks, and I have my red flowers and abundant fruits, nourishing each other, achieving mutual success.